Welcome back to the Floorplan, Series 5, Episode 1. Now, last time we spoke, Libby Sander was an assistant professor. These days, though, you're an associate professor, promoted in between Floorplan series. Well done. Bravo.
Thank
Bravo,
you.
Bravo.
Very thrilled.
You should be. You
Very
work
cool.
bloody hard. Congratulations.
Thank you, Matt.
What does it actually mean?
Well, in academia, we have these levels that are based on what you do in terms of the contribution of your research, the contribution of your teaching and service to the university, to the business community, to community in general.
Yeah.
So they have a promotions committee, and when people think they're ready, then they apply, and a committee sort of assesses you on those three areas and decides if you're suitably qualified to
You're
be promoted.
Up to muster.
Mm.
It's quite a process, though. Do you have to sit before a panel and talk?
It's a huge
to-
process.
Yeah.
So it's like many dozens of pages to do the application at the start of the year, and then you have a big committee that reviews your application, and then you sit in front of a large number of people. And
How many?
They ask
How
you
many? How
questions.
many?
I'm just trying to remember off the top of my head. I want to say about maybe 7 or 8.
Far out. Yeah, that's similar. There's another academic who works in the health faculty. He's an exercise physiologist, I think. Neil Chapman is his name, and I've had a little bit to do with him recently, and he was promoted to assistant professor, I don't know, ALB, it's a Bond University thing. But he was describing the same process, the sort of intimidation of sitting in front of an eminent 8. He said 8, and it's brutal. He described the process as brutal, but he succeeded. So well done to
there you
him
go.
too. Well done.
Congratulations.
It's quite a handful who went up this year, so it's exciting.
It is exciting.
Anyway,
But you have been continuing your litany of woes, Matt, and I've been thinking about this a lot in the break because of Jeff Bezos.
oh, okay.
Well, because, as you may know,
I
Jeff's
don't know, is that good or bad to be thought
Well,
of? It depends on perspective.
It does.
Yeah.
So Jeff's getting married, which is in Venice, apparently in a couple of weeks, which is lovely
Yeah.
because they both seem very happy. So I'm
Oh.
actually thrilled for them.
Wish him nothing but
That's
joy.
not my
Yeah.
point about Jeff's impending marriage. It is more about, have you seen a photo of Jeff recently compared to Jeff, say, 15 years ago?
I'm not up to date with Jeff's stuff, to be honest.
Well, hence my point, Matt. This is exactly my point when we
Right.
start talking about your injuries.
Yeah.
So Jeff has a longevity company. We're going to talk about the longevity industry in a minute.
Yes.
But he has kind of transformed his own appearance, maybe with the benefit of all the research they're doing in his company and a few trips to the gym. But I have an idea.
Yes.
Well, let's talk first. Since the break, your meniscus sadly required surgery.
Yes,
So you've had
it's
surgery.
repaired. It's repaired.
How's the recovery?
Well, firstly, can I talk about the anaesthetic?
Can you?
How
Yeah.
good's that stuff? Love it.
So I don't share the same love for, obviously, medical procedure is very important. And
Yes.
if you've got an emergency, fantastic. But no, I'm not as enamoured as you are.
Yes.
But my second child was a cesarean.
Yes.
And so you are fully conscious
Yes.
with an anaesthetic, obviously.
Yes.
And that was surreal because I was like, I'm sure I'm going to be the only person on the planet who's it's not going to work for.
Yes. Right.
Just bizarre. And I was like literally freaking out. And the anaesthetist was like, it's okay. Like, we're all good. Like, he'll be finished in a second.
With a
And I was like,
sheet
what do you
in
mean?
front of you.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
obviously.
Bizarre.
And
Bizarre.
yeah, like
So common, but so bizarre.
So
Yeah.
bizarre. Like, so yeah, being awake with an
Yeah.
anaesthetic while very bizarre.
Knowing
Anyway,
they're doing all this stuff.
so you've got the knee and then you also choked on some toast last
Talk about
week.
the knee first, because I find this stuff.
Sorry, the knee.
The
Mhm.
knee, just a basic arthroscopy, but I had a full thickness meniscus tear that had to be kind of stitched at one end. There's blood supply
Mm.
on the outer edge, I think it was,
Right.
of the meniscus. That's all fixed. Recovery's been great, and I'm feeling $1 million again, which is
Right.
good. Only a couple of weeks later. But the choking incident was just this weekend.
And toast. You choked on some sourdough toast.
Well, the lesson for me is don't laugh and talk demonstratively whilst eating particularly well done
don't you
toasted
remember
sourdough.
that from when you were a little kid?
Yeah,
and
probably,
you
but family of fast
talk
eaters.
and
Go,
you
go.
talk
Yeah,
too much.
family of fast eaters. Anyway, I've found I've been carrying a little bit of a cough for a while, and a little bit of sourdough got lodged in my throat. I coughed, and that sensation where you just keep coughing and you can't get any air in. I remember that bit. But the next thing I remember is sort of rising up from a slumped position in my seat opposite my mum, who I was talking to. My poor mum, 83
Oh my
years,
gosh.
looking at this unfold. And I'd wigged out. I'd had a coughing fit.
Lack of
Obviously, not
oxygen.
enough air, lack of oxygen, and wigged out.
Okay.
Never fainted in my life.
Oh my gosh.
And and that weird sensation of coming to, a bit like post-anaesthetic.
Mm.
And I'm looking around and everyone's going, "Are you all right? Are you all right, mate?" They're all eyes in this rather large cafeteria on me. It was the most eerie feeling. Anyway,
Oh my
I'm
gosh.
fine. Perfectly
Well, okay.
fine. But
This is not good, and hence my idea. So listeners may have heard my episode with Charles Hoskinson,
yes.
who has this fantastic health clinic in Wyoming, longevity clinic. So I think, so what we need to do, Matt, I've decided, is we need to send you as a case test to Charles's clinic in Wyoming and see if he can, because he talked on the podcast how
He did,
that 10 years off backwards, right, of
Yes,
aging.
yes.
And you've had so many cricket injuries now. I've lost track in the last year with shoulder.
I wonder how many
knee,
years I've whittled
toe.
off as a result of late life sporting endeavour.
So I feel like this is what we should do.
Yes.
And in case you're worrying or wondering if this is just a new thing, the longevity industry is $610 billion a year. That's the value of the industry. Because everyone's decided, well, obviously it's not great having all these injuries or whatever's going on.
Well, people generally are being healthier for longer, so they want to maintain it.
Well, they're going to live longer. So biohacking, okay, so that's 50 million Americans are interested in biohacking.
I don't even know what it is.
So we're going to talk about that in a moment.
Okay.
So biohacking, self-optimization. So basically intervening using the latest science, tech, lifestyle interventions to do a few things: enhance your performance of your body, slow aging, and extend your health span. So it's pretty cool. And health optimization podcasts are actually in the top 20. So millions of downloads monthly. And the industry is going to be worth $27 trillion by 2026, Matt. So you've got to get on board.
Gosh.
So you've tried some of the biohacking things already. You just don't know this. So
How?
I'll tell
Who?
you.
No, what? No.
Cold exposure.
Oh, yes.
Cryotherapy.
Like ice baths and whatnot.
Mm-hmm. So you've got, so it's all kinds of things. So it's too much for us to go into here, but you've had a little dip of the toe in the water. Literally.
Not so keen on it, to be
No,
honest.
you didn't. But so
My
there's
wife
the
loves it,
nootropics that we've talked about.
Yes.
The brain stuff.
Yep.
There's so many things here. So this is the new black, is longevity, biohacking, etc. So I think I'm actually going to be seeing Charles this week, that I might have a chat to him and say if we can use you as a test case and send you to Wyoming.
You're seeing Charles this week?
Yes.
Yeah.
So I will ask him if we can perhaps send you as a test case to the Wyoming Health Clinic and see if we can take 10 years off your aging and your injuries.
I'm here for it.
We don't have any. I reckon
Yeah.
this would be great, Matt, because we can, the academics here in our health sciences division would be super interested to see, well, what do we achieve? We do all the baseline measures, find out where Matt's at.
I am hopeful that this particular facility that you're sending me to, that of course I'm going to be going to, has a bit of an underground secret bunker type vibe, Area 51, Nevada, UFOs in the room next door, that sort of thing.
I've seen photos. It may have some bunkers, but it's a very lovely building, so I don't know. But I think Area 51 is a big tourist destination, Matt, so you could go there during your sojourn to be made younger in the US. Let's see if Charles can fix you.
What is it, Scully and Mulder? Bit of X-Files stuff. They'll be there. They'll be there for sure.
Yeah.
David Duchovny.
So that's
Gillian
my
Anderson.
idea.
Yes.
But one of the reasons why this is becoming so huge is because there was a new story that came out that poor old Gen X. I'm a Gen X.
Yeah.
Gen X.
Yeah, I'm Gen
So
X.
Gen X are apparently the loser generation. They used to be just called the sad generation who kind of missed out on the bonuses in the middle. But yeah, apparently we're now the loser generation. So there was a story about that this week. So that's a bit depressing. So I think
Why?
Gen X are I think multiple reasons, like they didn't get the financial wealth of the baby boomers. And then I saw a tweet actually about, I'm a Gen X because I grew up in a generation where, your parents would lock you outside for the whole day.
Yes.
You'd have some food if your friend's mum happened to gone shopping and gave you a sandwich, you drink water out of a garden hose, right?
No water bottles for us.
Don't stuff around with Gen X's, right?
Yeah.
So we were just the quiet people in the background, and then the millennials and Gen Z have been much more vocal about what's good for them and what's not good for them, and we were just sort of anyway. So I think the Gen X's are fighting
seeking
back.
parental love.
No, they're into longevity research. I'll show you.
Yeah, bloody.
Yes. Exactly.
You X, Y, YZs.
But the other exciting thing is the digital nomad is not going away. So guess what?
What?
How many people do you reckon are doing the digital nomad lifestyle in 2025?
So, but just to bring people back into the room, yes. Digital nomads, people who are of no fixed address in a work sense.
So they can work. Yeah. So they obviously may have a house, but they decide I'm going to go work from here, work from there, or just move around all of the time. They have an employer, maybe they work for themselves, but they can be location independent and work from anywhere.
Well, are you asking for like the figure of them?
Are you trying to have a guess, Matt?
If I was going to say, well, I don't know how this is going to translate, but if I was going to say as a percentage of the workforce, I'd say something like, off the top of my head, I'd say 5% was at the absolute maximum.
Well, in 2023, it was 35 million people. 2025, 50 million.
Gosh. 50 million. 50 That's million worldwide.
Digital nomads. Yes. And obviously, there are particular countries where this is going to be a lot more feasible than others. But yes, the number of digital nomads in the US was 18 million in 2024.
Wow.
So very interesting. Gen Z are about 20% of the digital nomad community, but then the rest, so the Gen Xers, they're going, well, I stayed there and I was a corporate slave for decades. Yeah. Stuff that. I've now got my remote digital nomad job.
I'm working out of my Winnebago, yes.
But I'm very excited on that note to have back Ella Cotterell, who is one of the top 3 most popular episodes we've had from the first time we had her on. And since then, Ella has moved from the Sunshine Coast in Queensland to London via many other places, really transformed a bit about the kind of work that she's doing, and has some really cool stories to share with us about her digital nomad experience, but also what to do, what not to do, and how to kind of make your business run better.
Let's hear from Ella Cotterell on her return to the Floorplan.
Ella, I am so excited to have you back on the podcast again on the Floorplan. Your episode with us, and I can't even remember off the top of my head what season it was, but I will link it in the show notes, is in the top 3 most popular episodes out of all 4 seasons so far.
Wow. I mean, it's so exciting to be back here and speaking with you. I love talking with you, but I have goosebumps just hearing that. So it's really exciting to hear that my story resonated with people and that people like my approach to work and my values. So that's really cool.
I think the honesty of it, that it's not easy and it's not always straightforward, and there's so many YouTube channels out there where it's like, just do this and just do that and then everything will be great and you'll make $100,000 a month and life will be fantastic, which is generally just total rubbish, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah. So it was very honest, and I think that's what really, really resonated with people. But one of the things that I'm super excited about, always to talk to you, but you've kind of become a digital nomad. And since we last had you on, when you were living on the Sunshine Coast, so just up the road from me, and then you kind of did a bit of traveling last year, and now you're living in London and you've totally reinvented your business. So tell us how you went from here to there. In a nutshell.
Oh my gosh. I mean, I'll definitely oversimplify the journey for sure. But I think something for me that's always been a huge value is being able to travel and the freedom in work. It was something that I think we touched on in our last episode, but at about 2018, and I was doing my honors degree in psychology, and I was kind of looking ahead at my future and what can this look like, starting to feel really suffocated by this idea that I'm going to be in an office Monday to Friday, 9 to 5, and that's just the end of that conversation. And so from that point, I started to think about what could my life look like. And it's taken me, this whole time to really land here. But, last year I was living on the Sunshine Coast, kind of in a situation with my ex-partner, which wasn't really fulfilling me or, where I wanted to be. And ultimately had been dreaming of London since 2019. And I just thought, you know what, I'm just going to go travel for a little bit and get it out of my system. And then I'll come back to the Sunshine Coast and I'll be a proper adult again. And that is not what happened. I came to London. I did travel. I went to Portugal. Where else did I go? Paris, Copenhagen. I did a bunch of travel, and I just realized, this is not going to get it out of my system. This is actually the start of how I want my life to look. And it was really exciting to me that I had built a business that could come with me despite time zones and all the kind of other things that stop people. So yeah, it was the opening chapter of, okay, I think I want to actually move to London and use this as a base so that I can, maybe live in Paris or go traveling to all these different
Oh.
locations whenever I wanted to. And yeah, so I made the decision and I came over here, and it's been the best thing that I've ever done.
Mm. We're going to come back to this in terms of when we talk about the different spaces and how you're finding working in them. But you've also reinvented your business too. You've changed emphasis.
Mm,
So tell us a little bit
mm.
about revisit what you were doing and what you're doing now and how you sort of arrived at that. Because I think you're being held up here now as like the poster child of the digital nomad, but also the portfolio career, which is great because so many people say to me all the time, but I can't change careers and I've already invested so much in this particular,
Mm,
thing or degree or whatever. So
mm.
we last time talked about your journey from first class honors in psych and that road, and then setting up your own business. And now what you're doing is another iteration of something completely different. And so I love that. And I know the listeners will love to hear about this because it's so
Mm.
freeing to say, yes, it's fine. You can go, I'm sick of that. I want to do something else.
Absolutely. I think for me, I kind of wandered into the virtual assistant space, and we spoke about this last time because I was experiencing this burnout. I realized I was autistic. I needed to totally restructure the way that I was working. And so I came into the virtual assisting space because that's kind of what suited me best at the time. I had transferable skills and I could kind of build a business that way. And over time, as I recovered from my burnout and I started to really land in working with very specific clients on specific things, I started to understand the flavor of work that I wanted to do again. And I started to bring in some of my academic, psychological history and path, and started to think that, okay, yeah, there's actually more that I want to be doing here. I always knew that being a VA was just a stepping stone. I have I'm very lucky and very privileged to have such an extensive educational history. And so I've arrived now this year thinking, okay, now that I'm recovered and I'm not kind of swimming and drowning,
Mhm.
what can I do with my life, and what am I actually good at, and where's my expertise? So I hired a mentor at the start of this year just to kind of help me with getting to from a virtual assistant space to being more of an online business manager. And through working with her, she's said to me, you're actually really good with systems, you're really good with operations, you're actually someone who I can see as being a consultant, for values-led businesses and working with people to totally up change their programs. And that's what I'm doing in a lot of the spaces at the moment, where I kind of go in, see what's happening, give the whole system an audit, look at what's working, what's not working, and then change the program so that it's more efficient, more productive, but also more in line with their values. And that's been really rewarding for me because I'm someone who's really in the justice liberation space. And I really like to work with people who, like yourself, see a different vision for where we could go. And, I think it's easy when you're starting a business, it's so unfamiliar and so scary that we just want to jump into the template that's already been done before us. But by doing that, we're just replicating what's already been done. We're potentially causing, more harm. We're perpetuating oppressive strategies and systems. And so, how can we actually find a new template and do new things? So, that's kind of where my work has landed at this season of my life, which is really exciting.
And I'm really, really lucky to work with you myself. And that has been really transformative for me because the type of thinker I am and the type of the way that I work tends to be fairly shiny thing, idea, shiny thing. And so, when you first talked to me about systems, probably like some people listening thinking, oh my gosh, either that makes me feel really stressed or it feels really oh, like, oh, I
Mm.
can't deal with this. So, what does systems mean in this way that you're approaching it? And how can that really, maybe you can share a story of how that's really helped a client transform their business without feeling that they're kind of really stuck in some linear
Mm.
process that really is very uncreative?
Yeah, I mean, for me, when I think about systems, it's your digital toolkit. Basically, it's the infrastructure that holds your business up. And most businesses operate in the digital world at this point in time, unless you're using physical paper copies, which I would highly recommend against doing. You want to have a system and multiple systems in place. And so, for organizations that have multiple kind of industries and pathways in their business, you want to make sure that your systems are working for you, but also that they're talking together, that they're efficient, that they're cohesive. And I think when people think about, oh, operational processes and systems and all that kind of stuff, it sounds really boring. For me, it's genuinely so exciting. I love taking a bird's eye view at an organization and seeing, okay, what are we doing now? Where are we going? Are our systems, even holding us now? And can they hold us in the future? And I think that's really important. Sometimes I think we overcomplicate things and we think that we need the most fancy system and we need the biggest, most expensive thing. And really, it's about looking at your individual business and at the organizational level and seeing what's going to work for you. I think in terms of success stories, for me, it's really about I think it's just about liberating people from this idea that it has to be complicated. A lot of times people come in and they're like, "Oh, I have three, expression of interest pathways, and, I'm collating testimonials in four different spaces, and these systems don't work for each other. And I have a dashboard, but everything's everywhere." And, I have to say to people, it just doesn't need to be that complicated. Let's just simplify where we can. And it's so regulating to figure out a system and to be using something that works for you. I've spent the last 4 months of the last year auditing my own business and changing my own systems. And I can't speak highly enough of how freeing it is to be able to have digital infrastructure that actually works for your business, where there's a clear system, it's repeatable. There's no need for you to kind of be drawing on your adding to your mental load and to be just stressing yourself out, basically. So when we can have a digital infrastructure that supports the business owner and supports the business, your whole system is regulated. You feel more at ease. Things are working for you. You're not kind of going upstream against things. So I think it's just so important to have a business that works for you in that way. Otherwise, what are you doing? You're just spending time reinventing the wheel, and you don't need to be doing that. You could just be Yeah, I think as business owners, we love to overcomplicate things. We love to kind of fill in the time. We love to be busy because it makes us feel better and it adds to our sense of value and our ego. But you could be spending that time just laying out in the sun, you know?
Mhm. That sounds nice. Do you have a top three recommendations that you think every freelancer or small business, these are the kind of things that you really should do, even if you're doing nothing else that will make your life easier?
Yeah, absolutely. I think there are a couple of things that I want people to think about is if you're a client or if you're a coach or a practitioner, what's your onboarding system look like? How do you capture expressions of interest? How do you onboard someone seamlessly and then, have that contract, the welcome email, all of that can be automated really simply. You want to have a project management tool that you actually use and check and works for you. Doesn't matter what it is.
Yep.
You can
Yep.
have seven different ones, and I've been there where you use this for that and this for that and that for that. Just pick one project management tool that actually is going to work for you, because we're all managing projects in some way or another. And then you want to have a digital filing system that actually works, that's coded properly, eliminates the mental load. And then, you could bring it all together if you're feeling fancy like me in a Notion board and have links and all the kind of automations and stuff that you can be doing. But I just think be really simple. Make sure your onboarding process is seamless, your offboarding process is seamless, and that you're managing things in a space that works for you and feels intuitive.
Yeah, I love that. And I'm even getting quite good at Notion now. So it's
I love
it's very
Notion.
helpful. Notion's great. And digital filing system, I think I know when are there some recommendations? Because even the word filing is like, oh my goodness, like I don't want to know about it. But yeah, are there, and I know a lot of listeners will be like, oh my goodness. But yeah, would you have a recommendation or two of systems that you think, hey, this is easy, intuitive, it's not too painful?
Yeah, I mean, I feel like this is not the answer that you want, but like the best tool is the tool that works for you. So for me, a
Mm.
Google Drive is the best.
Mm.
It's free, it's easy,
Yep.
it's easy to understand. You can have more complex ones depending on your business needs, but really it's about what works for you. Does it feel intuitive? And are you actually going to use it?
Yeah. I
That's
think that's
probably my best response there. Mm.
best advice, I think. So let's talk now a bit more about the digital nomad journey because it's still something that so many people are fascinated by, wanting to try out. And yeah, tell us about the biggest challenges that, when you decided, okay, you traveled around last year. What are the challenges? What's the real life on the
Mm.
road challenge of being a digital nomad? It all sounds super romantic, but
Oh, absolutely. I think the biggest thing for me was maybe oversimplifying how easy it was going to be. I think you want to make sure that you have enough cash flow to sustain that. So, something that became really evident for me when I'd made that decision, and this is, maybe limiting beliefs or whatever you might want to call it. But when I said, okay, I'm going to go away now for 3 to 4 months, I realized in that moment, okay, but if this doesn't work, if this doesn't
then what?
work, I can't just go off and get a job, or I can't just, go somewhere. Like the money that I have here is what I need to sustain the business. And so I think we need to, as business owners, be really, really smart around how much cash flow is the business bringing in, how much savings do I have. And that's probably my biggest advice to someone thinking about, okay, should I start a business soon? Get as much savings behind you as you can so that you can really ensure that your business is going to be able to sustain itself long term, because it does take longer than you think to generate a consistent income. So I think
Mm.
that's probably my number one thing. The second thing would be, um, don't think that you're going to be as productive as you are when you're out traveling the world. I think
Yeah.
that I didn't realize that, when you're off in Paris and Portugal and all these things, yeah, there's work to be done, but you don't really want to do it when you're out seeing all the sites. And so you have to be really clever about, okay, how much work do I really have to do? And having a really strict and routine around that, I think would probably be a recommendation.
Mm, I think so. All those places you said are amongst some of my favorite places. So yes, if I was in Paris or Portugal, I would not be getting very much work done.
There's croissants to be eaten.
Oh
What
my
you know?
goodness, so many things to do. So on that though, how do you balance that productivity with not just locking yourself into a room all day and not also then
Mm.
just not doing any work all day? Were there specific routines or practices you've developed to balance those things?
Yeah, I think starting the week, it was about looking at, okay, what work do I have on this week? What meetings do I have on this week? And then, what kind of things do I want to do, and what times do I have to do those in when I'm in these places? So, can I do work from a 10 to 2 p.m. block and then I've got the afternoon off, or can I do work in the afternoon and have the morning off? So it's about kind of chunking your time and really sticking to that. And if you don't stick to that, the consequences of your actions will become very clear in a week or two, because you have to catch up on that work. So yeah, I think it's just about having, as I always say, a good structure and a good system for how you're going to approach that, and being realistic about that. If you know that you're going to want to spend a little bit more time in one place, then let yourself do that and kind of have that big picture view. If you work in a monthly block like I do, can you kind of batch things in the first 2 weeks or in the last 2 weeks? And yeah, just laying it out so that you're taking a proactive approach and not a reactive approach.
And knowing yourself as well. Are you someone who can say go and do something for the morning and then sit down and concentrate on a project depending on the type of work, or other people might be like, no, I'm not going to enjoy myself going off and doing that until I know that XYZ is actually done. So I think knowing yourself
Exactly.
as well and not just following all these routines you might see on Instagram of like, get up at this time or do this, because ultimately that might be completely disastrous for you and your personality and work style.
Absolutely. I think that's a really good point. Something that I see in the online space a lot. I mean, it's happening less so now, is, the 5 a.m. club, waking up
Oh,
early, seizing the day, journaling. I know, ew.
which is fine if you like
I
getting up at 5 a.m. There's no problem. I'm quite an early riser, but the idea that everybody should do this and, you should go for it, wake up, go for a 5 kilometer run. Yeah. Well, no, that's not what suits everybody. Some people do their best work at, between 10 p.m. and 1 a.m. So just do whatever works for
exactly.
you. right?
Exactly. And I think that's a big lesson I've learned recently, not just in traveling, but just, I've created this business and then all of a sudden you kind of find yourself back in the confines of a 9 to 5 and feeling the shame of I have to wake up early and do it this way. And recently I've just kind of given myself the permission to just start at 10 a.m. Start at 10 a.m. I work a little bit later and it works so much better for me. I'm so much more switch on. I'm so much more productive. So as you said, knowing yourself and being realistic and then blocking it that way so that you can still enjoy your time, but just be realistic. It's, you're not going on a full holiday, you are still working. So you
I
have to
think
keep that
that's
in
really
mind.
important. Yes. And so,
Mm,
one, you won't be as relaxed and in vacation mode as you might be on a real holiday. But secondly, it's better than being stuck in an office for 40 hours a week in one city, right? There are real differences. And I love that you said about 10 a.m. because I was like, great. Whenever I'm working in Europe or the UK, people don't start work until 10 a.m. off, especially in
mm.
Paris, right? It's like, oh, this is nice. Whereas in Australia, where it's always light so early, people are in the office at 7:30, 8 o'clock, but they're
Mm,
also out the door a lot earlier, usually in most industries. So I think adjusting to different seasons is also important as well, and just the culture of the place that you're in. So you might want to get up and
yeah.
start work at 5 o'clock in London, but unless you're working with people in another time zone, probably nobody else is working, right?
Oh, totally. And that's something that I really enjoy about London and Europe is that, I'm from Queensland, so everyone's up at like 4:30.
On
Friends
the
are like, "Do you want to
beach,
go get a
get a
totally,
coffee at
you want to
5
go get a
a.m.
coffee at 7 a.m." And I've always felt like, the odd one out there because no, I actually don't want to get a coffee with you at 7 a.m. I want to be in bed. So here it's been really nice. I feel like adopting to this culture has been really easy for me because people tend to be late risers here and I am definitely a late riser as well.
That was going to be one of my questions. Have there been one specific cities, let's start with that have been most conducive to your work style and why? I'd love to hear more about that out of the places you've been exploring so
Mm.
far.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, I think London, and that's why that I live here, is because I love, I love the culture here in London. Obviously, there's some toxic elements here as well. People really overvalue wealth here and wealthy individuals, and I find that really challenging to deal with because I just think it's crazy. So that's probably been my biggest challenge here is seeing the kind of disparity of wealth and equity that's in a city like this, and it is really challenging to wrap your head around. But culturally, I really align with the work structure here. Everyone has, I would say, and again, I haven't worked in corporate here, so if someone listening to this is thinking that I'm totally off the game here, that's probably because I just run my own business. But I feel like people have a better gauge of work-life balance here. They
Mm.
start kind of whenever they want. They start 9ish, 9:30, and then finish around 5:30, and go to the pub as English people do, um, and take their breaks. And I think that's something that I really like that about being in London. But I'd love to work in Italy. I have a plan maybe later this year to kind of do a bit of a Italy stint, and I think that would probably be my ideal because they love to take long breaks there, and they're not super into the corporate world at all.
No. So I'd love to explore some of the other cities that you're in because I know so many listeners will be like, I'm thinking about this, I'm thinking about that. So tell us where else you went. You went to Portugal, you went to Copenhagen, Paris, maybe Amsterdam
Paris.
as well. Did you?
I
No.
didn't go to Amsterdam, so I think most of the time was in those cities that you mentioned. I did visit the Cotswolds, which is in England already, so I did a bit of England travel too. But I mostly had London as my base, and then spent a little bit of time. And I really loved Lisbon. Lisbon was really beautiful energy, and it was nice to kind of dip out of London and see that people are still nice when you go to get
So
some food or anything like that.
were there a lot of digital nomads there, a lot of expats working from there, or tell us a little bit about what that was like?
There's a lot of, I mean, here as well, there's a lot of like WeWorks and things, which I'm sure you'd be across, which I noticed a lot of people here work um, totally remotely, which is really interesting. So I've worked here at a lot of the Soho houses and some other kind of houses as well.
Mhm.
So many people that do. But for me, when I was traveling, it was really about getting an Airbnb or an apartment that I wanted to spend time in. I wouldn't necessarily go to the other kind of hubs and things like that because I do find them a little bit boring.
Mhm. And so is Paris like Emily in Paris for you? From
Think
a
about
from a
Emily in
work
Paris
culture
money.
perspective, yeah, maybe you weren't dressing up like that every day, but yeah, was the work culture? How did you find that compared to, say,
I mean,
London, Portugal?
it's hard to say. So I didn't spend too long in Paris to work, so it's hard for me to comment on the work culture there because I don't feel like I spent weeks and weeks like I have in other places. So it's
Mm.
definitely harder for me to comment. I would like to. We're planning to maybe move to Paris in the future for a month, not a month, a year or so.
Oh wow,
Um, because I have French ancestry, so I can get a passport and live there for a
amazing,
little bit, which will be nice.
awesome, cool.
So we can check back in again. And I'll let you know what the culture's like there when I do.
And did you spend long in Copenhagen?
It was about a week and a half. So
Okay.
again, not too long. Yeah.
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 So what spaces, I see your photos on Instagram of different locations you're working from, which is so great because that's what I talk about in my research, finding the space
Mm,
that supports the type of work you need to do. So tell us
mm.
about some of the spaces you found that you're using for different types of work and what has been so great about them.
Yeah, this is what I love about being in a big city like this is that you can go and explore so many different cafes and so many different free spaces that you can take your laptop to and work there from. And there's some really, really beautiful spaces here. I'm lucky that a lot of my clients here, have Soho House memberships or whatever, and they'll kind of take me with them, which has been really cool. And I think for me, it's been really clear, and I think about your work a lot when I'm here, that the right space is can just be totally change the trajectory of your day, your creativity, your inspiration. And I do think that that's a really, really integral part of my own work is working in beautiful spaces. So I mean, what was the question again? What
So
what the
how,
beautiful
yeah,
cafes
like
are?
what were some of the types of spaces? Was it co-working spaces? Is it cafes? And what would you recommend to digital nomads in terms of how do you
Mm.
discover, or just anyone who might be working in their city at home, like how do you kind of discover what spaces are going to help you?
Amazing. Yes, I would say my first point of call is always TikTok. There's so many great recommendations on there about cafes that you can co-work in. So the thing about London is that you can't actually take your laptop and just work at any cafe. Like you probably will get kicked out because a lot of them have
Interesting.
a no laptop policy, which is a bit sad because some of them
Oh,
are really beautiful. But you can understand that you have a busy cafe, everyone's there with a laptop not moving. It would probably be a bit frustrating. So I would say you have to Google the best co-working spaces that are free, and that's what I've been doing. If you have something like a co-working membership and that's available to you in your budget, there are so many amazing ones here that just keep getting added up. I'm here
mm,
in East London, and there's a new one in Shoreditch House which has, oh Libby, you would love it. I think it's an infrared 50-person sauna which has like a soundscape thing, so you can go visit the sauna, and there's a co-working space with all these like elixirs, and then
oh my
you can go do
gosh.
a sound healing and yoga
Oh my
after.
gosh.
Yeah,
Okay.
really cool. So I'm gonna check
London's on
that one
my
out
list for this
next.
year. So yeah, definitely going to be. I'm not sure about being. I don't want to be a sauna with 50 other people though. That sounds
No.
horrifying. Definitely not. Just myself, maybe. Mhm. But yeah, that sounds incredible. And I think that's a real trend we're seeing in offices as well. Is this? It's only the highest rated offices that have all of this amenity that people want to go to. So I just came back, as you know,
Mm,
from the MBA study tour in Japan and saw a number of co-working spaces there. So eBay actually we work in
wow.
Japan, in Tokyo. So their
Mm,
entire office is
wow.
WeWork, which is incredible and such a gorgeous space. So it's
Mm.
becoming more and more popular, even in a place like that, which has been much more traditional. So is it cafe
Yeah,
or co-working
absolutely.
space that is the favorite for you? And maybe you can't work
Ah.
outside as much as you used to in Australia.
I think probably a co-working space, to be honest. It's something that I'm working towards. They are expensive, especially in
Mm,
London. Like everything here, they are expensive. So it is an investment. And I'm such a homebody that I have to make sure it's worth my investment because majority of the time I'll just work from home.
mm,
But I think a co-working space is great because you have that additional, I hate the word networking, but we'll just say
mhm.
it here, that additional networking capacity so you can meet new people.
Yeah.
So it depends on the kind of co-working space, but if you're into something a bit different, like in Shoreditch or East London, it's very cool. But it's just, I think it's totally the new way of working. As you said, no one wants to go into an office, sit under LED lights, hear their co-worker screaming down the phone, and have to eat
Mm,
lunch in a dingy kitchen anymore.
mhm.
We can demand better for ourselves now, and I think that's really exciting.
Yeah, I don't want to go down the whole everyday carry YouTube type uh, niche. However, I know that, it's kind of fascinating. I do find myself watching those videos from time to time because I'm so fascinated. And when you are a digital
Mm,
nomad, you need to have, or even if you're not traveling, if you're just moving around the city or moving around to different workspaces during the day, you kind of need to have a setup that actually works for you. So,
mm.
what are the technologies or tools that have been kind of useful, helpful for you when you leave in the morning? It's like, well, I've got to take everything I need for the day. And so that can either be insanely, it takes you 3 hours to go through it on a YouTube video. Yeah.
Mhm.
What are the essentials for you and how do you sort of manage that?
Yeah, I mean, in my physical space, is that what we're talking about at the
Yeah,
moment? The
and then when you're
physical
moving
essentials?
around, yeah. So great. Let's start with your
Amazing.
home office, and then when you're traveling around the city each day, between cafes and co-working spaces, how do you kind of figure out in the morning? Oh my goodness, what do I need to make sure I can actually do my work
Absolutely.
today?
Yeah, absolutely. I think for me, my physical space, as we've touched on, is really important. So, and I always think about you when I'm doing up my little desk. I'm like, Livy would be so proud.
I love it.
Because I think I always have a candle on the side and I love to have that burning. I think that's something that's really nice and just adds this really gorgeous sensual element to your workspace. I like to have essential oils on in the background. I have a really beautiful ceramic coaster. Like everything is just has a really important purpose. Laptop stand. I know that that
Mm,
sounds really boring, really
no.
important. I
Hmm.
mean, having the actual perfect ergonomic structure is something that I didn't actually invest in for a really long time, which is kind of crazy if you're just working from home the whole full time. I really recommend doing that. So just like adding really beautiful touches to my physical space is really
Hmm.
important. And then honestly, I'm probably the worst person to ask about taking things because I have a really forgetful memory. So I always forget something when I go to co-working spaces. I would say remember your charger is the
Your
first one.
laptop.
your laptop, and then always pack water because people in London refuse to serve you water half the time. And honestly, that's it. A good pair of noise canceling headphones, just the
Mm,
basics. Make sure I think for me, investing in top quality basic stuff has been
mm.
game changing. Yeah.
I'm going to link it in the show notes, but I'll also obviously send it to you. My youngest son, Remy, he is really kind of into this, and he's recently found this channel where this guy and his wife are. I think I actually don't know what he does. He's obviously some sort of online influencer, and he's set up his home office, and it's insane. He has this moss wall behind him that was made by someone in the UK. He lives in the UK. He's British. And this, I need this moss wall. It's completely crazy. And just the level of thought, I really appreciate that he puts it. It's a very beautiful space into the desk, into every single thing. And he has this chair, which is also incredible from one of the big furniture manufacturers, office furniture. And so I was like, that sounds amazing. My chair is so not up to scratch now. I'm going to get. So I looked it up, and I think it's about $2,300. So
Of course.
I'm not going to buy that right now. But it is really inspiring just to see, from a wrist rest when you're talking about ergonomics and all of these things, because I think he largely works from home all the time, unless he's
Mm,
traveling. But yeah, just what are those things that are going to make life? And when you are traveling or you're working in a co-working space or a cafe, those small things that can bring that beauty with you in terms of what makes
mm.
your life easier. And yeah, so you can't probably take the candle because they don't really like that much in the co-working space if you start setting it on fire. But there are other things that bring you a lot of pleasure, whether it can be cables. Like this is a whole rabbit hole which I've recently started going down
Mhm.
thanks to Remy. So I'll link that as well. But I think you're right. And so it sounds like you're very minimalist with that, which is great. And you can still get everything done. And you don't have to carry around, half a technology store just to be a
Well,
digital nomad, right?
yeah, exactly. And I think that's my whole ethos is around simplicity and just using
Mm,
good quality things. I think that's another thing when you're traveling around London, you really don't want to be carrying much. There's so many people as it is. You want to just kind of have the simple things that you need. And yeah, the essentials, it's like invest in the things that are going to bring you happiness. Have a really good quality laptop, a laptop stand, a good chair,
mm.
good headphones, all that kind of stuff. I think it just makes the quality of your life so much better, especially when you're working 5 days a week.
Definitely. So now that you are fully in this digital nomad space, is this the future of work? What do you see happening over the next 5 to 10 years from the clients you're working with, from the cities that you're working in?
Yeah, I think what I see, and this is again the kind of people and clients that I surround myself with, it is that freedom of space. I think that's becoming more and more of a thing. And obviously, since COVID, we've seen people kind of try and do the opposite, where they're trying to get employees back into the office and have these schemes. But I do really think that as we move forward, it's going to be less about where you live and where you're located, and more about the skills that you bring to the team and if you're a fit and what values you have for that organization. I think that we're really getting to a time, specifically, in the rise of AI as well, around like who's your human team and what do they bring for you and how do they add to the organization. And we're really starting to see the crumbling of these structures around, old late stage capitalism, authoritarian leadership, like all of that is really starting to crumble down. And we can thank a lot of Gen Zers for that, who kind of come in and say, why are we doing it like that? We don't need to do it that way. And why do I have to come into the office? Why can't I work from home? And so I think we're really at a time in history where we're thinking about, well, let's actually look at the data. What is actually productive for my team, for my organization? And how can we make, the people that work for me even happier? I've seen some really, really cool offices and spaces on TikTok where it's primarily younger audience, and they talk about how they run their business and their organization, and it's just so different. And I think I really appreciate that. As an example, one thing that I've seen is, okay, people pick their hours that they work, so they have a set amount of hours that they have to work in the day, and they'll say, okay, I'll come in from 11 till 5, or I'll come in from 7 till 3, and they get to pick the hours that work for them. And I think just at a bare minimum, people should be able to do that, because we all work so differently across the day. So I think we are starting to see a bit more flexibility and fluidity in the way that we work. And I think that's really exciting.
Yeah. And what about those meaningful connections, maintaining community, finding new clients as you're moving around? How have you done that?
Mm.
And how would you sort of advise others?
Yeah, I think it's a tricky thing, and people ask me this a lot. How have you made this work, and where do you get your business from? For me, it's primarily been word of mouth referrals. I have obviously marketing channels that I'm developing even more, but that's very much been, my community has been integral to building my business. And it's not just an online community. I think when people think about community, they think I have to have tens of thousands of followers and blah, blah, blah to kind of make this work. No, like who's actually in your physical community space? Like who do you spend time with? Do they know what you do? Should they maybe know what you do? Because, people can drop your name in rooms that you would just never have even been in. And that web kind of moves out. So I think nurturing the community and the connection and staying close to people that are important to you and your business values is, yeah, an amazing thing to do.
Mm, definitely. So, advice that you would give to someone thinking, that's it. I'm so inspired by Ella. I want to go to Paris, Portugal, and London. That I'm going to leave my traditional job and become a digital nomad. What advice would you give to someone who's thinking this?
Yes, I love it. I think my first piece of advice would be to have a plan. And obviously, plans don't always go to plan necessarily, but you need to have a bit of an understanding about what's my plan for the next 3-ish years. And I'm really serious on that. Businesses take a long time to get to a point where they're generating a good profit for you. So you need to have a good financial plan. What happens if you don't make the money that you need to make? Do you have someone that you can fall back onto? What are your offering suites? How are you going to make money? How are you going to get clients? How are you going to market yourself? What systems are you going to use? I think setting that foundation is so important, and something that I did not do. So
Mm,
it can be done. I wouldn't recommend it. It's very stressful. I think if you can sit down, really have a full, planning business development session with yourself around, what is this business? How is it going to run? How am I going to market this? And really kind of thinking about all the different things that can go wrong and all the things that can go right too. For me, I came in with a very simplistic, positive, I would say probably naive approach to business. And I think that's important in some respects, but I also do think it's important to be realistic. So that would be my first thing. My second thing would be to get support. Having a mentor or a support person totally changed my life. And I don't just mean from a business coach that's telling you that you can make $10,000 in 3 months. that's actually not what I mean. I mean, talk to someone who is in your industry, who's doing the same thing that you're doing, who's been where you are, who can guide you through that process. I think that is just the best investment of your time, energy, and resources. So those are my big two. And then also believe in yourself, get a good therapist. It's possible. It's totally possible. It may not happen as quickly or as easily as you want it to, but it is possible. And I think if you have a desire for that in your heart, then that's, it's there for a reason and you should follow that.
I love that. So, lastly, a couple more questions I wanted to ask you, Ella. One is, and for me, this has been continues to be quite interesting, unusual or memorable locations where you've been trying to do work. So for me, I'm often doing radio interviews. I use my car a lot because cars are actually quite well soundproofed, and I'm very, very rarely in the office. So I end up often doing that in the car. But I was in Singapore recently and they wanted me to come on back in Australia. And I said, I'll be at the airport. Pretty tricky, but I'll be in the
Oh
lounge. So
no.
it should be fine. Because, well, we used to be that lounges had meeting rooms, especially in the Qantas lounge, where you could actually work. But they don't seem
Mm.
to have that anymore. So in the Singapore lounge, which is actually very large, there was no meeting room. So I was doing a live radio interview and I could find no one to wear quiet. So there was a baby crying on one side of me and there was someone doing it. Was just, I'm like, I'm so sorry. And they were actually fine with it. It was for Triple J Hack, luckily. So they were like, oh, this is a reality thing. We weren't talking about digital nomads, but yeah, I've done trying to get work done in some really bizarre locations. So yeah, has there been a very unusual or memorable location where you've been trying to do work with quite a lot of challenges?
I mean, I think honestly, if anywhere in London that you spend a little bit of time in the city, there are some interesting people around. And so sometimes you can kind of be exposed to the interesting people that come in. But, I I am probably a bit of an over planner because I'm autistic and I have all these sensory things. Like I really have to make sure that the place I'm going to work in is going to be the right space for me. And I know within 5 minutes of sitting down if it's not going to work. And if it's not going to work, I'm out of there. I'm out of there because I'm not going to spend my precious productive hours, which sometimes there are so few of, in a space where it's stressful and overwhelming. The chairs are uncomfortable. So I think I'm probably on the other end where I like really research places and I really have to make sure that I'm going to be comfortable there. But yeah, London is a big city with lots of really interesting people. So I can really understand.
I feel like I need to channel this a lot more from you because I'm sure you would never have agreed to do a radio interview in an airport lounge. So,
Absolutely not.
yeah, so I
But these
think,
are lessons.
yeah, I think, yeah, I could definitely channel a bit more on this from you. So what's next for you, Ella? So maybe moving to Paris a little bit down the track. What are you working on at the moment that you're most excited about?
I'm really excited about where my business is going. I think, I've really stepped out of this old kind of virtual assisting space where I was doing, kind of more social media management, podcast production, things along that lines, and stepping more into a consultant side of things and really using my skills and expertise that I've, kind of gotten throughout the years. And that's really exciting for me is like working with organizations who have purpose, who are values led and really, yeah, assisting them in their growth and scaling. So that's really exciting for me because I feel like I'm in a place in my career where I'm not just doing something reactively to support my neurodivergent brain, but actually stepping into my skill sets in a way that also supports my neurodivergent brain. I just got a new website built. I just launched my new services and offerings. So I'm very much in this next phase, and it feels really exciting to be here. It's definitely felt scary. I think jumping into any new season can feel really triggering in some way or another, but yeah, it just feels like there's a lot of possibility in this next era, which is really fun. And hopefully down the track, do a bit of work in Paris. I'm going to be stepping into more retreats and event spaces. So um, yeah, I'm really trying to kind of move my business away from an hourly rate and more into a different way of working and being so that it supports just endless growth and not feeling so much of a kind of corporate time schedule,
Mm,
if that makes sense. Mm.
totally. And is there anything that we haven't talked about yet that you would love to share with the listeners?
Yeah, I mean, I think I do get quite a few questions of people asking, how did I do this? And, that they talk about it being really inspiring to watch someone do that. And I think that's really a nice thing to hear. My advice for people is to follow people who you resonate with, who are doing the same thing, and just to know that it's possible for you. I think that so often we think if it's not happening within 6 months or a year, then okay, well, it just mustn't be the thing. If you think about it, I've had this idea since 2018. It's midway 2025. That's, a long time to finally land in this space. And things do take time, and if you want to build something long term, you have to think long term, and things are going to be sustainable, step by step. Don't get impatient. It'll happen as it's meant to, and just listen to the next step that's right in front of you.
Love that. And where can listeners find out more about you, Ella?
You can go to my website, which is just ellacotterell.com, or my Instagram, which is Ella L. Cotterell. And the spelling of that will probably be in the show notes.
Absolutely. We will link that. And it's been an absolute pleasure to talk to you as always. And I can't wait to have you back on for round 3 on the podcast from your next amazing location. And I'm definitely going to have to come and visit you soon, because it's living vicariously, watching you in all these spaces in London is just getting a bit too much. I need to go for a European trip for sure. So
absolutely, it'll be so amazing to have you, and it's always such a pleasure to talk to you, and I just love the way that you see the world. So I really appreciate your time.
Ella Cotterell back on the Floorplan for her second time.
Isn't she?
She's a good egg.
Isn't she? And isn't she having the best time?
Yeah.
So inspirational, aspirational. Yes. But she's not the only Aussie. A recent YouGov survey found that around 29% of Australians have been able to travel for an extended period of time and continue working. And 40% of Australians love the idea, which is not really very surprising, is it?
No.
As opposed to going to an office every day.
Indeed. If you have a choice.
Exactly. Yeah. So, but tech workers are leading the trend, which is probably no surprise. They're about 30% of digital nomads, then creative roles, and then financial services people. That was more of a surprise.
Well, interestingly, I have in recent times met a significant number of people who have worked in large banks or large financial organisations that are definitely working from home. That's a post-COVID hangover thing. But they've realised that, I can set my screens up here and I'm actually more productive on my own, undistracted by the office environment and the politics surrounding it. Yes. So perhaps in those specific industries, it lends itself to an efficiency if you can just do your thing without being worried about what the person in the office next door is up to.
100%. But it's not as much, unless you live in a very fabulous house, it's not as much of a lifestyle benefit as being an actual digital nomad as opposed to working from home.
Indeed.
And I like this in this story. So Brisbane software engineer Zach Murray, so he spent most of the last 2 years being a digital nomad. He's worked in more than 50 countries, the US, Mexico, Colombia, China, Portugal, Egypt, which, it has its downsides. So Ella talks about how you can overcome that. But 50 countries in 2 years, that's a lot. But good for him. But one of the things I loved that Ella talked about is not just the sort of fun stuff, but how you actually make your business more efficient and more optimized, because a lot of us are still replicating things many, many times and not having efficient filing systems and all kinds of things. And I'm going to ask you, Matt.
Yes.
Email. So how many email do you have in your inbox currently?
It's just under 25,000.
25,000. Yeah. So yes, Bond University Tech Department, please list your storage costs.
That's my Gmail.
That's
my
your personal Gmail.
Gmail.
What about your Bond email?
My Bond email, I wonder, okay, my Bond email, it doesn't say, but I know that I'm sort of running at 95% capacity of what I'm meant to be having.
So Tech Department keep contacting us. We have to upgrade our storage. So this is very, very inefficient, Matt, obviously.
Well, is it? I don't pay any attention to what's underneath the most recent
few. How hard is it for you to find things? Pretty hard.
The odds little keyword search.
Ella has some fantastic advice on how to make one's life less stressful in general, working, but particularly as a digital nomad where you don't have the luxury of having bits of paper, and we've talked about your desk in the past. We should come back to that this year. But
my desk is in tip-top condition.
I'm going to go have a look. Anyway, on the digital nomad, though, I'm curious.
Yeah.
What would be your top 3 digital nomad destinations if you were going to do this?
Oh, well, what pops into my – I don't know why. It's perhaps just how my brain works, but I remember seeing a photo. I think it was Sean Penn, but they've got one of those Airstream caravans perched atop a cliff. It's probably in Wyoming or Arizona or somewhere, very red earth and, monument type granite boulders all around
it's probably
the place.
Sedona. Sedona's on my list.
Sedona.
I want to go
I've
to
been
Sedona. Have you?
Oh, it's a gorgeous
I've got
place.
a friend who lives there. She
Stunning
loves it.
place.
Yeah, nice.
And just the isolation of the image, it's just peace. I get a bit of a red earth craving every now and then, either Central Australia or to see. I like the feeling of feeling like you're in the middle.
So
I don't know
where
why.
else though?
So that's that
actually
one.
named a place, but maybe
I was lucky enough to go to New York a couple of years ago. I could do a bit of time in New York, on the island, on Manhattan. I reckon only a little while because it's pretty busy. And then perhaps contradictory to that, South Island, New Zealand.
Yeah, beautiful place. Freezing though.
Yeah, but beautiful.
Beautiful.
Outstandingly beautiful.
Well, I mean, Sedona probably wouldn't be in my top 3, but I definitely do want to go there. Very predictable ones, as Ella talked about, Portugal and Spain, but tourists aren't very popular there at the moment. I love London, but I would not live there for any length of time because the weather's just terrible.
Too miserable.
Paris, definitely.
Paris is quite exquisite.
France would be great. As you know,
Paris is so grand.
So grand. And the architecture.
Yeah.
And then I, as you know, have this love of Central America, and there's a bunch of countries in South America I haven't been to yet. So there's probably a huge list if we sat here we could come up with. But this is why Australians, actually 50 million people around the world, everybody wants to do this. If you can combine earning income and travelling, I mean, but I'd get sick of it. I couldn't be like Zach because I'm quite a big homebody. I love being at home.
I like being at home too.
So I could do some short trips and then I would like to go back to my lovely home office, which is going to be much nicer than any office that I find in a cafe. But it's a fun idea. So yeah, love talking to Ella again.
She's a gem. On our next episode of The Floor Plan, Associate Professor Libby Sander, formerly assistant. A couple of things. You're going to have, on the topic of travel, you'll have a little bit of travelling to talk about, travel tales. It's all very hush-hush, secret squirrels, which is exciting and hopeful of a big name on the floor plan too.
Yes, indeed. So
a bit of sizzle before we slap the steak on the plate this week.
Such a nice Aussie analogy. So yes, another absolutely fabulous guest coming up on the floor plan. So I cannot wait to share my adventures.
Happy travels.
Thank you.
You've been listening to The Floor Plan, a Bond University podcast hosted by Dr. Libby Sander and Matt Webber. For more Bond audio and podcast content, search for Bond University on Spotify.